Silicon Valley, technology, art, green, and sustainability.
Hi, welcome to Silicon Valley Technology, Art, Green, and Sustainability. Today I have two guests with me, Rose Steele and Gary Parks, and they are theater consultants and experts in the theater industry. Welcome, Gary, and welcome,
Thanks.
Rose.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about your organizations and how you got started in this business? Rose, we'll start with you.
I can. Landry Bogan was actually founded by Paul Landry in the middle 60s, and he was one of the very first theater consultants. It was a brand new industry at the time, and his former students were coming to him and saying, you know, we're building these community college theaters and we don't know how to equip them. And he eventually met up with an architect named Jack Bogan, and they formed a partnership which continues to this day. Paul is gone, Jack has retired. Landry and Bogan is now a women-owned business. Heather McAvoy is my partner, and she and I have been working for the firm for 23 and 25 years respectively. So we are now a fully woman-owned business. And we consult with architects in the design for facilities of live performance. Theaters, auditoriums, concert halls, dance studios, black boxes, everything like that.
20-something years.
20-something years.
You're very young to have that much experience, Rose.
Thank you. Well, I was 12 when I started.
Child labor. Let's see, and Gary, tell us a little bit about what you're doing and your organization. I know you do a lot of things. You're also an artist, so tell us a little bit about what you're doing and your background.
I am on the board of directors of the Theater Historical Society of America, which was an organization founded in 1969 by a gentleman named Ben Hall, who was the first person. He wrote originally for the Time Life organization as a journalist and book writer. And he loved the old movie palaces of the 20s and 30s and 40s. And he was the first person to write a book on that subject in the early 60s that treated that subject historically, because those theaters were starting to be torn down back at that time. Anyway, it started out as a group of hobbyists that loved that. They began forming an archive. Then it began to add professionals, both in the motion picture exhibition industry and legitimate theater, and it began to broaden its scope to be an archival organization headquartered in Elmhurst, Illinois, near Chicago, to archive and preserve all the information possible having to do with stage and movie theaters of all ages and all eras. And so our archive is now the best center for information for historians if people are restoring theaters, or they just want to know about a theater that perhaps has been lost or whatever. Lots of photographs so that these things can be preserved for future generations.
And is it a library or is it an online source? Or
we have a website, which is historictheaters.org.
Okay.
And it is a photographic archive, an archive of actual artifacts from chunks of terracotta and cast plaster down to old projectors and spotlights. Yeah, we've got some griffins and stained glass exit signs. We've got a library, and we're starting to move more and more into the digital age, and eventually we want to have every object digitized. That'll take some doing, but we're starting to work on it.
And how did you get involved with it?
I joined in 1987 because in 1981, when I was right out of high school, I started running around photographing old movie theaters. Oh. And I thought I was the only one doing this. And I found out that there were a few books on the subject, not much, that they were restoring some of them, and that there were a bunch of other people like me that had this society. And I joined in 1987, and at first I would just get the magazine. There are 5 publications that come per year with articles, scholarly articles, and some fun reminiscences about the old theaters. And eventually I found myself, to make a longer story short, last summer I co-chaired our yearly event where we go to a different place in the United States. We've also gone to Canada and the UK to tour. A group of us will go and tour a bunch of historic theaters. And last summer I co-chaired the event, which was in the Bay Area. We saw 30 historic theaters in 4 days.
Wow.
Talk about herding cats.
That's a lot. So in Rose, how did you get started in your business, in your line of work?
Well, my background is in theater. I started out as a high school kid falling in love with theater and thinking I was going to be an actor. During college, when I was studying theater, it became increasingly clear to me that that was an unrealistic ambition. So I started working backstage. And over the years, moving up and down the East Coast and finally to California, worked as a carpenter, as a stage manager. I worked selling tickets in the front of house. And when we moved to California, I heard through another designer of a firm that wanted an office manager. So I actually started out at Landry Bogan as the secretary. But because I had a background in theater and a great interest, I was very well suited to become a consultant, and Paul and Jack were fabulous mentors.
And you were well-rounded because you had experience
Yes,
doing
because
all
I had
those things.
acted and directed and worked backstage.
And so you started off, how many people were at the company when you started off with doing your secretarial
There
role?
were 4 of us. There were Paul and Jack and an associate, and that associate is Heather McAvoy, and myself. And over the years, other people have come and gone briefly, but basically it's been the 4 of us ever since then. And so we were our own little family, and that made the mentoring very, very personal and very hands-on and very intense.
You're also involved in a Shady Shakespeare, so you still are very involved in the actual
Absolutely.
theater performance part, or?
No, I'm currently the president of the board of directors, and my primary responsibility is to assist the company financially, help them raise money.
And Shady Shakespeare meets up in Sanborn Park, up in the Redwoods in the summer. What time?
Absolutely. August and September. This season we're running Richard III and As You Like It in repertory. It's a beautiful spot, as you know, because I know you've been there. It's in a grove of redwoods with a creek running by. The performances are free.
Parking $6 or
Yes.
$7, whatever the park fee is.
I think it's gone up to $7. I'm not entirely sure, but the shows are free. We do this from the love of Shakespeare and as a community service, and of course it ties nicely into
It's great for families and people to come out and they can bring their own picnic and enjoy. There are some beverages and foods there, but it's a great place for theater. And then, so Gary, let's hear a little bit about your background. I know you have very deep roots in the entertainment industry, and you're a great artist, above and beyond what you're doing for this nonprofit.
Yeah. Well, yes, Hollywood's kind of in the blood. I mean, yes, I am a performing artist. I'm a singer. I've done a little bit of voiceover work over the years. But my father,
sketch artist?
and I design architectural art glass for buildings professionally, and have worked on theaters, decorating theaters from that standpoint. But my father joined Walt Disney Productions in 1938 and stayed there till 1960. He took a little bit of time out doing animation for the Navy during World War II, and then he worked briefly for Paramount when Cecil B. DeMille was doing the 10 Commandments. The Pillar of Fire effect in that is my dad's work.
That's interesting.
My grandmother used to always like to say, "My son-in-law wrote the 10 Commandments." And this was a very devout Christian woman saying this, so I guess if she could say it, anybody could. Anyway, but also I have my oldest cousin works for Warner Brothers on doing production on set work. And I had a great aunt who did some bit parts on TV. She also, her one big screen role was she played the nurse in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. That's Aunt Dorothea.
So your roots in the theater go very deep.
Yeah. And I've been on stage, a little, mostly singing. Yeah.
I've heard you sing. You're great.
Well, thank you.
So I guess, Rose, why don't you tell us about one of the most interesting projects you're doing, or anything that you want to share that's around sustainability and in projects with theater? And
I'd be happy to. The one that is most relevant, I think, is the one that's on the board behind me. This is called the Armory Theater, and it's in Portland, Oregon. And we started with an 1880s armory building and put a 2-theater complex with costume shop and offices and classrooms and all of the spaces that are needed to sustain this facility, except the scene shop, which is
how large
offsite.
of a facility is it?
It's the footprint of the building is 20,000 square feet.
Wow.
But when we were finished with the interior, we had 50,000 square feet of usable space. The building is on 5 levels, none of which are continuous all the way across the building. You know how if theaters are buildings about section, obviously the top and the bottom are very different. This was the first historic building and the first performing arts building to achieve LEED's platinum rating. And we were lucky enough to be there when they unveiled the plaque, and we were very proud. That was in late 2006, October of 2006.
So LEED Platinum.
LEED Platinum.
Wow.
And I don't think there's been another LEED Platinum theater constructed since then.
And to
certainly
explain
there
for
will
the
be.
audience what LEED is, it's Leadership in Energy Environment Design, and they're certified gold, silver, platinum. So this is like the top rated
Yes.
certificate you can get for building energy efficiency and water conservation and, you know, daylighting and all the things that we'd like to see in buildings now.
Exactly. And you achieve